celebrate the life of my grandfather, Robert Maynard. I'm Daniel Maynard, as it says in the program. I'm his grandson. And it struck me recently that from everyone else in the family's standpoint, from my father and his sister, all of us have never had a moment of our lives without Grandpa Bob being a part of it. But he had moments of his life where we weren't a part of it. It just struck me as an unusual feeling when I received the news about 2 weeks ago that Grandpa Bob had passed away. And it was just a surreal feeling, in addition to the fact that he was my last surviving grandparent. And there was a tenderness there also, just appreciating my last grandparent. And it just struck me that we've never had a moment of our lives without him being here. And as it got closer to the end, and none of us were really prepared, you're never going to be. There's no way to prepare for losing anybody. But even though we didn't know exactly when it was coming, I did feel each call that I made where I was able to talk to him on the phone, each visit where he came down to see us, or when we came up to Syracuse to visit him, I felt like I wanted to make the most of it and really, as much as I could, get to know him more than I had. Because when you're a younger kid, it's a very superficial relationship with your grandparents. It's what they can give you, or good times you can have with them. And you might not appreciate who they are as a person. And there's one memory I have in particular. This is a very long ago memory, starting when I was probably 3 or 4. My family and I would go to visit Grandma and Grandpa Bob at their house. And the purpose of it was dinner and spending time together. But usually I would only hold off for a couple of minutes before I would go over to Grandpa Bob and say, let's go down and play darts in the basement. And that was my big thing. Grandpa Bob always graciously and cheerfully said, okay, let's go down. So we'd go downstairs, and because I was 3 or 4, I would throw a dart, and usually it would skid on the basement floor, and if I was lucky, it would hit the board that met the floor, the plywood behind the dartboard. And those were the good throws. And Grandpa Bob did such a good job, and I didn't appreciate it at the time. It was reflecting later when I grew up. He did such a good job, not condescending, but also trying to encourage me because I was so terrible at darts. So I'd have one of my throws, it would skid on the floor, and I was always really competitive, so I'd get really upset. And Grandpa Bob would always even-keeled just say, hey, just throw another one, soon you're going to be hitting higher. Next thing you know, you're going to hit the board. And it didn't happen for a long time, but he always kept quietly encouraging me without treating me like a kid, even though I was. And even when I was younger, that was always my goal when I grew up, was to treat kids as equals as much as you ever can, because they are kids. And I didn't appreciate when I was younger, but as I did get older and started relating more to kids, I have my 3 nephews in Virginia, and I started to really think, wait a minute, that was probably one of my inspirations of how to interact with kids, was how Grandpa Bob would always interact with me in times like that when we play darts, where you do quiet encouragement, you acknowledge that they aren't going to be at the level that you are, but at the same time, letting them feel like they're an equal and that they're not so much worse, even though I was. And so the years went by, and I did finally hit the board, and then I finally hit the dartboard. And that was a really big deal. Those were the good throws. And he just really encouraged me along the way. It's just a small, simple thing, playing darts. There was other things, of course. I won't bore you with every memory I have, but that was one, especially in the last couple weeks, that I was thinking about, memories that I had. That was one that really stood out to me. And, like I said, when you grow up, you start looking at past family relationships in a different light, and you start wondering more about who they were as a person. And Grandpa Bob was very willing to bring up stories about when he was younger, and I know some of us have some of those stories memorized. But they were good stories, and we always tried to give him a good listening ear, because some of his memories when he was younger were his treasured memories. They were sort of, not the golden years of his life, but athletic peak, really good memories that he had, especially as he got older. And as Mother Julie mentioned, he lost mobility, he lost his leg, but he didn't become bitter about it. His memories didn't have a bitter feel at all. It was a happy remembrance of a time he was healthier. And he would show pictures of him in track and basketball, running. He had stories about being in the band, and all of those good memories that he had, and we just really, I hope we all appreciated them when we had them. Because as it stands now, whenever you lose somebody, that's what you have left is your memories of them. And that's why it does pay to never treat it like we always have more time. We don't know. Of course, with grandparents, we always have that feeling. At any time, we don't know if we're going to lose them. But it could be anybody in our life. And maybe we don't want to spend time to listen to what they have to say, or maybe they're repeating themselves. But I wanted to use it as a reminder to myself. And I encourage all of you to do the same thing, especially in this season. A lot of us will be seeing family. Maybe we don't see them very often. And just try to give them that ear and hear what they have to say and appreciate those memories, because we never know how many more we're going to have. Interestingly, as I was saying earlier today to some of the family members, that my sisters, brother-in-law, and my nephews and myself were in Syracuse for our annual pre-Christmas visit several weeks ago. And I was actually calling Grandpa Baum on the phone earlier that day to get in touch with him, because we planned to bring him to the museum that we'd done the year before. So I tried calling him on the day we were traveling. That was Thursday. And I didn't get through to him, and I tried 2 separate times, and I, at the time, didn't think anything of it necessarily. And then as we pulled into town, my sister got a call from our Aunt Karen, Grandpa Bob's daughter, and she let us know that he'd fallen at home. And at that point, we felt things might be okay. And as it turned out, we ended up being able to be in Syracuse. The following day was Friday, and we were able to come in. My sister and I were able to come in and visit with Grandpa Baum as they transferred him from his emergency room in the hospital to his main room. And we were able to be there for the transition. Karen and Bill, of course, had been there that day and a lot of other days, as Julie mentioned. And we all definitely owe them a debt of gratitude and appreciation for doing so many things to help Grandpa Baum over the years. But we were so grateful, my sister and I were so grateful to have that visit. And as I said, we didn't have any feeling at all that would be our last chance on this earth to visit with Grandpa Baum. It felt like any other visit. He seemed like himself as much as you can in the hospital. He was upbeat, he was matter of fact. A trained nurse asked him what had happened, and typical Grandpa Bob style, he'd said, "I fell on the floor, tried to get up, and I ended up pushing the button on my wrist, and then the cavalry arrived and helped me out of the jam I was in." And she smiled, and he even made her feel comfortable. He didn't take it too seriously. And that was a really good trait that he had. Not taking things too seriously, even though I know he had a lot of struggles and things were difficult for him with health, with the fact of having lost his wife and his daughter and countless other family members. But he stayed upbeat, he stayed positive. And he also stayed himself. And by that I mean, he seemed to me, and this is another thing I thought more about as an adult, that he just seemed to be himself all the time. And that might seem simple, but it's not. It's hard to actually be yourself all the time and not have different personalities or faces or moods. It just always seemed like it was the same Grandpa Baum. He was comfortable in his own skin. And I think that's a really valuable trait. It's hard to do that. And these are those things that we appreciate now. And the measurement of someone's life is difficult. A lot of you may have put the pieces together. Ironically, former President George H.W. Bush passed away hours before Grandpa Baum. So that was a very interesting week in our family as we were watching on TV. Every day would be commemorations and memories of President Bush. And as we were watching the televised funeral, I started having a sinking feeling a little bit when I was watching the people he had to commemorate his life and his eulogy and all of his accomplishments. And part of me started to feel, how are we ever going to compete with that? How are we going to keep up with all these accolades and these polished speakers that he had to honor his life? And I got down on myself temporarily, but then it started to occur to me when I paid attention to what they were saying, that the most meaningful things that any of them said about President Bush ultimately weren't actually about his accomplishments as a politician or even in business. It was family memories. It was relationship memories, how he related as a husband, father, brother, whatever the relationship was. Those were the memories that seemed the most touching, including when his son, George W. Bush, spoke. The things that he said that hit home for us emotionally were about family and about him as his father relationship. It wasn't about him having been a president. That was mentioned, of course, but the main thing that stuck out were the relationship memories and the love and how he made everyone feel included in the family and loved. And that's really what mattered more. At the risk of sounding kumbaya, it really was the main point of his life, was what he left behind as a legacy, were family members that had been touched by him and learned from him and appreciated him and had their memories, and they're going to hold them close to their heart. So that's my goal. Ultimately, today wasn't to compete with a polished speaker, a politician. My goal today is to really just lay it out there and let it be known how much I appreciate Grandpa Bob in my life. And the role model that he was, whether I realized when I was younger or not, was those lessons really did stick with me. I'm 32 now, 30-year-old memories almost, and they still stand out to me, clearly. And I'm still trying to learn from them. Like I said, he was a genuine person, consistent person, being who he was. And I want to learn from that also, and I want to feel more comfortable in my own skin and be who I am. Try to be a better person. I know he never got complacent with trying to be a better person. He would always include in his Christmas newsletter how Jesus had bought all of our rap sheets and we were sinners and we were grateful for that. So he never felt like, oh, I've made it, I'm a good person now, I'm already saved. He kept trying and he kept it in his mind to be grateful and not be complacent. And that's such a good trait and such a hard one. So that's something I really want us all to take away, if we can, as one of the lessons we learned from him, is to never stop trying to become a better person, to never get complacent, and also to not be complacent with people we love as we head into Christmas and New Year's, and we see our family, and we want to have meaningful times. But let's make sure we don't only focus on a special time of year. Let's try to do it as much as we can, every time we see people. Every time. It could be in the middle of March, it could be summer, whenever it is. Not get complacent and not assume we'll have another chance to ask them a story or pay attention to them. Do it now. We don't know if we'll have another chance. My own mother, I wanted to mention, was unable to come on this trip for the funeral, and she unfortunately was unable to go to her own parents' funerals. But she is here in spirit, and I know she supported Grandpa Bob through prayer and emails and phone calls, and she did everything she could and more with her limitations. And my sisters are in Virginia with her now, taking care of her, and they weren't able to make it. So I didn't want to let this go by without mentioning them, and they are here in spirit. They're sacrificing for the sake of family, like we all try to do. So if I could close with one more phrase in French that I remember from Grandpa Bob's newsletter that he always put at the top. Joyeux Noël et bonne année. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. I wish all of you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you very much.